So this is the last part of our laboratory evaluation for hemostasis. Okay, and this includes coagulation factor assay, fibrinolysis assay, global coagulation assay, and genetic testing for hemostatic disorder. Okay. So for coagulation assay, this is composed of fibrinogen assay, single factor, Erinogen Bethesda assay for anti-factor 8, and single factor assay for using PT, and factor assay 30. So for fibrinogen assay, the fibrinogen assay measure the functional fibrinogen level in plasma, which is critical for proper blood clot formation. And usually we utilize the Kloss method, wherein this is a clot-based technique, which is commonly recommended procedure for estimating fibrinogen function. So the assay involves using thrombin to convert fibrinogen into fibrin. Okay, and the time it takes for the clot formation is inversely proportional to the fibrinogen concentration. So the shorter the time, the higher the fibrinogen concentration is. Okay, so the principle of fibrinogen assay in your Kloss method, so the patient plasma, okay, is diluted at around 1:10 with orange buffer, and bovine thrombin reagent is 50 to 100 NIH units per ml is added to diluted plasma. And fibrinogen in plasma is converted into fibrin, and the time taken for clot formation is measured. So the clotting time is inversely related again to your fibrin concentration. So procedure, almost same with your PT-PTT. Okay, and we utilize your calibration curve, okay, generally and regularly, especially with each change of reagent. And calibration, we utilize your coagulometer, okay, as to the generation of various dilution of calibration plasma to establish calibration curve. So how do we test the patient sample? So the dilution first of your orange buffer and incubated. So the thrombin reagent is added and then the time taken for the clot measured. So the clotting time is compared with the calibration curve to determine the fibrinogen concentration in milligrams per deciliter. And if the clotting time indicates high fibrinogen level, more than 480 milligrams per deciliter, further dilution should be performed to obtain accurate result. Okay. Conversely, if the time is prolonged, indicating low fibrinogen level, less than 200 milligram per deciliter, a low concentration calibration curve is used for this one. For the quality control, we do have your normal and abnormal control. Okay, same with your PT-PTT earlier, and should fall within the laboratory reference interval. Abnormal control values should be close or below 100 milligram per deciliter. If your control are out of range, you should check again your um, equipments and control samples as to this. Okay. So for hyperbilirubinemia, okay, the reference interval usually um, for fibrinogen concentration typically range from 200 to 400 milligram per deciliter, and hypofibrinogenemia is less than 220. Okay, which is usually associated with your DIC or severe liver disease. And hyper naman is more than 498. May occur due to liver disease, pregnancy, and chronic inflammation. So the result in clinical utility, a fibrogenemia or the absence of fibrinogen results in prolonged clotting time and cause hemorrhagic symptoms. And this fibrogenemia involves abnormal fibrinogen, may result in prolonged clotting time. So this condition may appear similar to hypofibrinogenemia but may require alternative methods for confirmation. And your PT, okay, derived fibrinogen assay, are also used to estimate fibrinogen level but may fail to detect this fibrogenemia. Okay, so what are the limitations? So again, presence of your unfractionated heparin could interfere with fibrinogen assay, and fibrinogen degradation product or fibrin degradation product of more than 100 grams per deciliter can also prolong the time. Okay, so the thrombin reagent should be pure and unstable to sunlight or oxidation, which can lead to rapid thrombin breakdown. That's why it should be contained in amber bottles that is sealed. So for the single factor assay using PTT, so the procedure is single factor. So a single factor is estimate the activity of specific coagulation factor in plasma, particularly when the prolonged PTT but normal PP. So mixing studies is performed to determine if a congenital single factor deficiency exists, such as deficiency for your factor 8, factor 9, and factor 11. So you do have your hemophilia A, hemophilia B, and Rosenthal syndrome or factor hemophilia C. Okay, this test is commonly used to monitor prophylactic therapy or on-demand therapy for patients with identified factor deficiency, particularly in hemophilia A, which is the most common. So factor 8 assay. So the factor 8 assay uses PTT system to estimate functional factor 8 activity. So the test incorporates factor 8 depleted plasma, okay, into the system, which has normal activity for all coagulation factor except, okay, factor 8. Okay. Okay. And the result is interpreted as follow. So when the patient plasma is mixed with factor 8 depleted plasma and PTT is prolonged if the patient has a factor 8 deficiency. So the clotting time is compared with the reference curve to estimate the factor 8 in percentage or units per deciliter. So for the reference curve, of course, they are using laboratory prepared reference plasma, okay, and creates dilution series up to 1 is to 500. And each dilution is mixed with factor 8 depleted plasma to test and tested using PTT reagent system. So a linear log graph is generated to correlate clotting times to factor levels of your factor 8. And the dilution 1 is to 10 of the reference plasma provides factor 8 activity value, and this reference is used to patient test result into percentage activity. So how is the procedure done? So first is dilution, okay, and then you mix with PTT reagent and factor 8 depleted plasma. You incubate for about 3 minutes at body temperature and calcium addition, okay, to initiate clot formation, and you measure the clotting time for each dilution is recorded, and the result is converted into factor 8 activity. So for the control Almost same with your PT and PTT. For the limitation, so interlaboratory variability, so the coefficient of variation for factor 8 assay is high up to around 80%, leading to inconsistent and result across different laboratories. To reduce variation, so the laboratory uses commercially calibrated plasma to prepare the reference curve and ensure the linear proportion of the curve is used for accurate results. And the specimen integrity, of course, it would provide you an reliable result if your specimen is clotted, okay, hemolyzed, ecteric, and even lipemic. So what are the limitations? Usually the presence of your factor inhibitors such as your factor 8 inhibitor, your lupus anticoagulant, and even using multiple dilution, okay, will not match. Okay. The factor 8 modification, so do not accurately measure the B domain, deleted recombinant factor 8 or extended half-life recombinant factor 8 preparations that are increasingly used in therapy. So expected result, usually the reference interval for factor 8 activity is typically around 50 to 186 units per deciliter. And usually we utilize this, okay, for monitoring hemophilia therapy. Okay, because your hemophilia therapy is consists of factor 8 concentrate, okay, which is below, the factor activity below 10 may result in spontaneous bleeding. At levels above 10 units, bleeding risk is reduced. If elevated naman, this could cause association with thrombotic disorders such as your venous thrombosis. Okay. Test for other factors. So factor 9 and factor 11 are performed using similar method. Okay, with the change of the factor depleted plasma into the factor concern. Okay, the test for contact factors such as your factor 12, prekallikrein, high molecular weight are less commonly requested since deficiency of this factor do not typically result in bleeding disorder, although they can prolong PTT. Okay, so usually yung mga contact factor natin hindi sila nagko-cause ng bleeding. Okay, next, your Nijmegen Bethesda assay for factor 8 inhibitor. So, the Nijmegen Bethesda or the NBA is refinement of the traditional Bethesda titer, which is used to confirm or quantify your factor 8 inhibitor, which are typically IgG or class immunoglobulin. And these inhibitors are concerned for hemophilia, okay? Patients, particularly in the context of therapy where they may interfere with factor 8 treatment. So the procedure is almost same with your factor 8 assay. Okay? So how do we interpret? So the residual factor 8 activity, okay? Uh, and the percentage activity neutralized correlates with the inhibitor level. For example, no, the residual level is 75% of the control, so there is no significant inhibitor. If it's reduced to 25%, the inhibitor level is determined. So, Bethesda unit is defined as amount of antibody that causes a 50% reduction of residual factor 8 activity. So limitation. So usually false positive rate at 32% and false negative at around 5% is seen in your Bethesda method, and interlaboratory coefficient variation exceeding around 50%. So your NBA improves your Bethesda titer, and it is um, further redefined by your CDC to enhance accuracy and variability. Okay. Okay. Next, modification. So usually the inhibitor positive control is modified, the heat treatment, the dilution, and the depleted plasma serum. Okay. So hybrid NBA is used for utilizing imidazole buffered saline for the factor VIII depleted plasma. So an alternative one. So you could also utilize fluorogenic and chromogenic NBA to detect or measure your factor A production, factor 10A production at surrogate for factor 8 activity. Okay, so gumagamit na sila ng color change. Key improvements, of course, the refinement on 2012, and improve accuracy and specificity for your factor 8. Next is when both PT and PTT are prolonged, but PCT is normal and no other cause such as your liver disease, vitamin K, DIC, and comadin therapy. Usually, we utilize your involved in this pathway is your prothrombin or factor 2 and factor 5 and 10, the common pathway. Okay? Pagka dalawa na yung prolong, the PT and PTT, that is common pathway. Pag isa lang, this could be extrinsic for PT and intrinsic pagka PT. So the deficiency causing prolonged PT and PTT is common pathway and typically associated with hemorrhagic disorder. So we could perform for single factor assay using your PT by plasma depletion. So the following factors, depleted plasma is used to identify the specific deficiencies such as your factor 2, factor 5, factor 7, and factor 10. Since this is PT, we are including your factor 7 as the intrinsic part. Okay? The plasma are used to assess the activity of specific factor, and results test will help identify which factor is deficient based on the PT prolongation. Okay, interpretation, of course, if the PT is normalized when mixed with the patient plasma, it indicates that the patient plasma is deficient in the factor from depleted plasma. So for example, factor 2 depleted plasma is added to the patient and the PT normalizes. So the patient has prothrombin deficiency. So same as with 5, 10, and 7. For factor 13 assay, okay, is a coagulation factor essential for normal hemostasis and wound healing. So it functions as your transglutaminase, catalyzing your bond with your alpha and gamma chain. So usually, it forms a strong fibrin clot and it can resist to your fibrinolysis. So that's why it is not reflected on your PT and PTT. So congenital factor 13 deficiency, okay? Inheritance is usually autosomal, recessive, and affects your both sexes in all races. And the prevalence is usually extremely rare, or the estimated frequency of about 0.5 per million births. And symptoms in infants, usually bleeding manifest at the umbilical stump, seepage, or yung sa mismong pusod, sa pinagputulan ng pusod. Doon nagkakaroon ng bleeding. Okay, in adults, the bleeding is slow but progressive with poor wound healing, hematomas, and even recurrent spontaneous abrasion. So, post-traumatic hemorrhage is also common, and factor 13 level under 5% result in significant bleeding. Pag acquired factor 13 naman, okay, could be in related to chronic DIC, sepsis, inflammatory bowel disease or IBD, and your various infection. Also can be caused by some of drugs such as your isoniazid, penicillin, valproate, and phenytoin, okay, can trigger acquired factor 13 inhibitor, leading to complete absence of factor 13 and severe bleeding. Again, your factor 13 is very important in stabilizing your clot. So what is the assay that we utilize? Okay, does not reflect nga, again, your PT and PTT, making it um, factor 13 assay necessary for diagnosis. So we utilize chromogenic factor 13 assay, okay, that usually quantify your factor 13 activity by activation of plasma by thrombin that is reacted with factor 13A with fibrin amine substrate or your glycine ethyl ester and your glutamine residues of a peptide substrate releasing ammonia. For the measurement, the ammonia released is measured using glutamate dehydrogenase and NADPH consumption method, which is inversely proportional to factor 13 activity. And the limitation, immunoassays for factor 13 available for various manufacturer can provide factor 13 concentration values, but they do not mention measure functional activity. Okay? More on the levels lang. And the clinical implications, severe bleeding if there is deficiency in factor 13, even small trauma or little trauma and wound would have slow healing. And diagnosis should be suspected with patient with normal PT, PTT, and platelet count, but okay, with unusual bleeding and poor wound healing, and even recurrent abortion. So these are the factors that utilizes PT and PTT and the TCT. Next is your fibrinolysis assay, wherein your D-dimer, okay, immunoassay is first. Okay, so for your fibrin degradation products and plasminogen assay, even your tissue plasminogen activator assay, and your PI1 assay. Okay, for your D-dimer assay, usually, the D-dimer detects fibrin degradation products, okay, particularly the D-dimer fragments. And, okay, which is a specific marker for fibrin link subsequent to fibrinolysis. Okay, this assay provides evidence of your thrombosis and fibrinolysis, making it critical diagnostic tool for thrombotic and fibrinolytic disorder, such as your disseminated intravascular disorder. So during coagulation, fibrinogen is converted into fibrin polymer by thrombin and cross-link with factor 13A. And simultaneously, the plasminogen and tissue plasminogen activator binds to fibrin over time. Your TPA activates plasminogen and to form your plasmin. That will degrade later on your 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 fibrin into your products such as your fragments of D, E, X, and Y fragments. Then you could also have the unique, okay, fibrin degradation product of D dimer, okay, wherein this is only formed in cross-link fibrin, not in non-cross-link, okay, indicating both coagulation and fibrinolysis. So for the normal and elevated D dimer level, so normal levels is less than 2 nanogram per ml in healthy individuals, and elevated greater than 200 is associated with acute or chronic DIC, okay? Or even systemic fibrinolysis, deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, and predict stroke, okay? Can also predict the stroke. So elevated could be seen in following thrombotic therapies. So what is the principle? We usually utilize microlatex particle in buffered saline solution are coated with monoclonal anti-D, D-dimer antibodies. Okay, so when D-dimer of the patient binds with antibodies, the particle agglutinates causing turbidity. So the turbidity is measured using usually turbidimetry or your nephelometry. Okay? So yan yung usually na ginagamit natin. And no, the principle for the quantitative D-dimer analysis, okay, is sensitivity. The assay is sensitive as to the depends in the avidity of the monoclonal antibody. Okay, and detection method. Mostly, assay can detect, okay, your D-dimer concentration as low as 10 nanogram per deciliter. And units measurement, so results reported in D-dimer units and even fibrinogen equivalent units, depending on the target of your monoclonal antibody. So what is the clinical relevance of your D-dimer immunoassay? So condition diagnosed usually the thrombotic disorder such as your um the such as your deep vein thrombosis, high pulmonary embolism, and even the DIC. Monitoring patients undergoing thrombolytic therapy. Okay. The turnaround time, usually automated quantitative D-dimer assay, provide results within 30 minutes, enabling rapid clinical decision. So usually madami ng laboratories that already have the D-dimer here in the Philippines. But as I see it sa patient, usually nakikita ko lang yan, no, sa mga malalaking ospital. And the fibrin degradation products immunoassay. So detects fibrin degradation products as to fragment E, D, E, okay, in serum and urine. Okay. The higher sensitivity and diagnosing monitoring for your DIC, since your DIC has both coagulation and fibrinolysis. That's why your fibrin degradation product is very helpful, okay, in detecting your DIC. Okay, next. For principle of your fibrin degradation product, okay, methodology. The Trombo-Wellcoat test is widely used as slide agglutinin test or even okay, the test employs polystyrene latex particle, okay, and in buffered saline suspension coated with polyclonal antibodies. Okay. So the specific to your fibrin degradation products, specifically the fragment DNE. Okay. Next. So the test is calibrated to detect concentration more than 2 microgram per NL. Next is for the immunoassay. So of course, you need the sample procedure. You usually utilize serum or urine. Okay, in the collected as in a special tube, and it prevents in vitro lysis to ensure accurate result. And usually we mix it with 1 drop of the sample is combined with 1 drop of the latex suspension. Okay, present in at detectable concentration. Okay, so agglutination, visible agglutinins occurs when the fibrin degradation products are present at detectable concentration. And your immunoassay, usually positive test pagka more than 2 nanogram per deciliter. Pero pagka less than that, no agglutination and it is below the detectable levels. Okay. Sa primary use, okay, this is usually utilized for your DIC. Okay, for DIC, more on DIC tayo. Okay, so limitation, it has a low sensitivity level. Okay, as to it cannot detect your fibrin degradation product level below 2 nanogram per deciliter. And limiting its utility in detecting mild, okay, fibrinolysis or early stage condition. Replaced in routine practice. No, usually we do the automated D-dimer assay, okay, and offers greater sensitivity and specificity, making them preferred choice in clinical application. Next is your plasminogen assay. So in plasminogen assay, it is an active precursor of your plasmine and an enzyme for your fibrinolytic pathway. So this is responsible for degrading your fibrin later on. So this is a plasminogen is synthesized in the liver and in circulate as a glycoprotein, becoming activated in plasmin by via TPA or your plasmin tissue activator. Okay. So this process plays a critical role in hemostasis. Okay, and dysregulation of plasminogen activity can result in excess fibrinolysis or hypofibrinolysis. So for the assay, okay, usually we utilize activators such as your streptokinase derived from beta hemolytic streptococci and serves as a plasma activator. Okay, so your synthetic substrate, The assay is the assay uses S2251 or your HD, valine, leucine, lysine, TNA, a chromogenic substrate that mimics your fibrinogen that will release or add up with your activator. So the reaction, so your streptokinase binds with plasminogen in patient poor plasma, converting it into fibrinogen. And then it will cleave the synthetic substrate, releasing your nitroaniline. Okay. And your PNA generates color and the intensity is proportional to plasminogen concentration. Okay. So measurement, the intensity of developed color is measured photometrically, and calibration curve is again used for this one. Next, for reference interval, the plasminogen level is around 5 to 13 milligram per deciliter. And decreased plasminogen causes thrombolytic therapy, okay, DIC, acute promyelocytic leukemia, hepatitis or other liver disease. Hereditary plasminogen deficiency could also cause decreased plasminogen levels. And the clinical impact of this, okay, it is associated with increased risk of thrombosis. Okay, ineffective response to your thrombotic therapy in the presence of low plasminogen level could cause thrombosis. So again, ano nga ulit yung effect ni plasminogen? So this is responsible for your fibrinolysis. That's why no decrease in levels of this one could cause thrombotic disorders. Okay? So with the increased plasminogen naman, okay, causes in systemic fibrinolysis, acute inflammation, and even caused by your pregnancy. So clinical impact, it could cause hemorrhage. Okay? Hemorrhage naman, bleeding naman kasi excessive yung reduction. And this is again the um, plasminogen assay showing your plasminogen will be added with your streptokinase. Okay? And it will form plasminogen streptokinase complex. Okay, reducing your RPNA to your um, PNA induced color. Okay. Next is your TPA assay. So for your TPA naman, again, this is one is responsible for the cleaving of your plasminogen into plasmin. That's why this one will have a 2 plus physiologic plasminogen activator alongside with your urokinase. So both enzyme plays critical role in fibrinolysis. So the process of breaking down clots by converting plasminogen to plasmin at fibrin surface. So the TPA is predominantly synthesized by vascular endothelial cells and has a short plasma half-life of approximately about 3 minutes. So consideration. So your TPA levels are influenced by diurnal variation. That's why it is higher in morning. Okay, higher in morning levels. Okay, and physical activity such as exercise. So in vitro, okay, the TPA binds rapidly to plasminogen activator 1, making it unstable. So, of course, the patient must, in the procedure, the patient must remain at rest before collection because it is increased nga during exercise. And the tourniquet application should be minimal to avoid artificial TPA elevation. And collection time must be documented. Okay? As to the time because of the diurnal variation of your TPA. And the specimen acidification is required immediately after collection to stabilize your TPA. It uses acidified citrated tubes. So after centrifugation, the PPP should be frozen, okay, at negative 70 degrees until analysis. So for your enzyme immunoassay, measures the plasma concentration of your antigen. Okay? Sa chromogenic naman, okay, the plasminogen is added to the patient plasma And the mechanism is usually the plasma TPA converts plasminogen to plasmin. Resultant plasmin activity is quantified using chromogenic substrate. So meaning pagka na-breakdown ni TPA yung plasminogen into plasmin, it would cause a color reaction. Okay, result interpretation, usually intense color is proportional to TPA activity. Okay, so the principle of TPA assay, enhance TPA activity. Okay, soluble fibrin may be incorporated to amplify your TPA activity in the assay. And the reference interval, usually upper limit for activity is 1.1 units per ml, and the upper limit is for antigen concentration is 14 nanogram per ml. The implications as to the decreased levels of your TPA, it is caused usually by impaired fibrinolysis, which have an increased risk of your myocardial infarction, stroke, and even deep vein thrombosis. For increased PI1 level naman, excessive PI1 inhibits your TPA, contributing to the thrombotic risk. And implication as to the therapeutics, your recombinant TPA, Alteplase, marketed as Activase by Genentech, okay, mimics natural TPA, which is usually used in thrombotic therapy for conditions such as your stroke, acute MI, and even pulmonary embolism. Yan. So same almost with your uh, plasmid. Okay. Next is your PI1 inhibitor assay. So the PI1 is critical regulator of your fibrinolysis, and it is synthesized by vascular endothelial cells and hepatocyte and circulates in the plasma primarily bound to vitronectin. Okay, it is stored in large quantities in platelets. PI1 function by activating free tissue plasminogen activator via covalent bonding. And the normal and elevated levels usually usually a normal level is approximately 10 nanogram per ml with again diurnal variation. And elevated levels could be associated with thrombosis, considered a vascular risk factor and potential marker of aging. Bakit? Kasi nga it inhibits your TPA. Kaya pag mas mataas ang PI1 kaysa kay TPA, it could cause thrombosis. And deficiency naman could also relate into bleeding, no? Rarely reported, mostly in individual with homozygous compound, heterozygous mutation in SERPIN1 gene. Okay? This is usually observed in old order Amish due to founder variant. So pag deficiency naman, okay, it would be measured by serum assay since serum expresses platelet-derived PI1 in excess, and absence of the detectable PI1 in serum confirms complete deficiency. So same as with your TPA ang process nito. So immunologic methods usually measures the antigen level, and pag chromogenic, the PI1 activity. Same with your TPA. Okay? It utilizes urokinase to bind with PI1, and your urokinase PI1 complex is immobilized using solid phase monoclonal anti-PI1 antibody. And your monoclonal anti-urokinase antibody is used as detecting agent, provides an indirect measurement of your PI1 functionality. And when it comes to your chromogenic, okay, naman, your agent TPA is added to your PPP, okay? And the residual TPA activity is measured in plasminogen system, meaning indirectly measurement of your TPA activity based on the inhibitory capacity of your PI1 is measured. And the color intensity, inversely proportional. The lower intensity, the higher the PI1. Bakit? Kasi lower activity ng TPA would cause, would correlate with higher activity of the inhibitor substance of your PI1. Increased PI1 promotes thrombosis by suppressing fibrinolysis, and decreased PI1 relates rare but associated with hemorrhagic tendencies in cases of your complete deficiency. So implication, monitoring PI1 activity is critical in thrombotic and hemorrhagic condition, could be utilized for cardiovascular risk, okay, fibrinolysis dysfunction, and even genetic studies, okay, specifically for founder mutation. Almost same with the preparation for TPA. Next, global coagulation assay, wherein there are specialized tests designed to evaluate no hemostatic status of patient comprehensively. Okay. Unlike traditional assay that focuses on isolated aspect of coagulation, this method provides a broader view of clot formation, stabilization, and resolution. So you have your TEG and ROTEM. So your TEG, your thromboelastography, and rotational thromboelastometry, okay, developed in 1940s. So usually they utilize whole blood, okay, as to the analyzer and designed to assess entire coagulation process in real time. To mas maganda to kasi ang buong coagulation system. Okay? Usually, TEG 5000 and TEG 6S thromboelastography, hemostasis analyzer, okay, made by Haemonetics, and your ROTEM is made by your IL Welfern. Okay? So the mechanism, the measurement of clot dynamics, including the clotting time, that's the time taken for initial clot to form. Clot formation kinetics, so the rate of thrombin generation, fibrin formation, and platelet activation is also measured. The clot strength, no, structural integrity of your clot is also measured. Stability, the resistance to mechanical stress of your clot, and clot dissolution, assessment of your fibrinolysis. So usually, this is used for no, liver surgery, cardiac surgery, and even in traumatic cases. And no, this is very good assessment since it completely analyzes the whole coagulation system, not only the coagulation factors, not only the platelet, but the whole, no? From the primary hemostasis up until to fibrinolysis. Next is your thrombin generation assay or your TGA, wherein your clotting assays such as your TT and APTT rely on thrombin generation to convert fibrinogen into fibrin. However, this assay may not accurately reflect your quantity or kinetics of thrombin generation, unlike your ROTEM and TAG. Okay? Your TGA, the principle, okay, evaluate phase kinetics of thrombin generation. So more on the thrombin ang minimeasure niya. Initiation phase, which starts of thrombin formation. Peak thrombin generation at maximum rate of production, and then regulation and inactivation, which is natural mechanism to limit thrombin activity. And it is usually used, okay, better characterization of physiological hemostasis, overall balance of your coagulation and fibrinolysis, the bleeding risk due to, okay, identification of hypocoagulable state, and thrombotic risk detection of hypercoagulable state. So usually, monitoring and assessment of efficacy, okay, hemostatic agent, antithrombotic therapies can be utilized by this one. Lastly is your genetic testing. So for genetic testing, has revolutionized the diagnosis and understanding of bleeding and clotting disorder. Okay, so introduce no high throughput sequencing. This was introduced in 2007. Okay, has become the gold standard in detecting genetic variants linked to platelet-related and coagulation-related bleeding disorder. This is replaced earlier methods such as your Sanger sequencing, which lack precision. So ano yung mga techniques for genetic testing? We have your whole genome genome sequencing that decodes the entire genome. Okay? Pag whole exome naman, mayroon lang target protein region. Okay? And pag gene targeted, specific gene is associated or checked for hemostatic disorder. Okay? For advantages, this is cost effective. So sequencing are continuously decreasing, making HTS more accessible. And precision, it detects wide range of variants, including those previously unidentified gene that causes mutation. Okay? And application in hemostatic disorder. For the platelet disorder, okay, the dysfunction on the genetic variants, such as your Glanzmann thrombocythemia, Bernard-Soulier, and even in platelet storage pool deficiency. Pagcoagulation disorder naman, in relation to the genes, your hemophilia A, B, von Willebrand disease, and rare coagulation factor deficiency. So this is the table depicting variants of your gene and the coagulopathy present or detected.